Good morning, world. I am Judy, your web-based therapist, making therapy accessible and convenient for our clients in Florida and New York, and of course, sharing information worldwide. Today, I want to talk about misconceptions or just 5 false things that some people believe about mental illness that are just not true. And of course, things that are getting in the way of people receiving assistance when they need it because of these negative ideas or negative beliefs that some people in our society have spread around about mental health and which contribute to the stigma relating to mental health and mental illness. So today I want to talk about 5 things that are just really not true, but I know some people do believe them. But before I get into that, I want to take a quick moment and say, if you are subscribed, thank you so very much for being a part of our awesome world. And if you are not yet subscribed, please take a moment and click the subscribe button below so that you can join our world of awesomeness and remember to tick the bell so that you're notified when I post new videos so that you don't miss anything. And of course, if you'd like to purchase 1 or 3 of my books, there's also a link below that will take you to a website that shows you all your different options of places where you can get 1 or 3 of my books. Okay, first thing is that mental illness is a punishment from God. Mental illness is not a punishment from God, no more than cancer or a broken leg is. I don't know why or how or this. Actually, I have some ideas of how this may have gotten started and spreads a little bit more than too much, but it's not a punishment. Mental illness is not a punishment for any more than any other illness that you can get, that a person can suffer from is a punishment from God. It's just an illness, just like any other one. And it requires us to take the same types of actions that we would take from to deal with any other type of illness. So if you experience any type of mental health issues, just take the time, seek help, reach out to whomever you need to reach out to get the help that you need. Know that it is not something that God is punishing you with any more than it is something, If we don't see any other illness as a punishment, I don't know why mental illness would be a punishment. 2, mental illness is absolutely not a sign of weakness. Again, it is an illness just like anything else that we get. And seeking help for mental health, seeking help to deal with a mental illness is not a sign of weakness. I've heard many people say it, I actually recently heard it on, it's not that recent, where someone criticized a person who shared that they experienced depression after they lost a sibling. And that just infuriated me. It's not a sign of weakness to experience anything mental health related because our whole body can experience difficulties, and that include we can experience mental health related issues. Mental illness is not a sign of weakness. It's not because you're not as strong as someone else that you can't handle what other people can't handle. It's just that, you know what? Lucky for them, they haven't had to deal with what you're having to deal with. They're not experiencing the illness that you're experiencing. But it is not absolutely in no way is mental illness a sign of weakness. It's not one of those situations where you're going to be strong-minded and strong-willed and you're going to will this illness away. You can't will the illness away any more than you can will away cancer or a broken leg. It is not a sign of weakness. And it's actually, and especially in our society, it is a sign of strength when you are able to reach out and get help for a mental illness, because the way our society stigmatizes mental health, sometimes, it takes courage to be able to stand up and say, you know what, forget society, I need help, I'm gonna get it. So it gives you an opportunity to show your strength a lot more. 3, mental illness does not mean that you cannot have a full life. With many people that you know, many people who are providing services to you, many people that you're spending time with, that you're hanging out with, are going through a bunch of whatever different cocktails of mental health issues that we don't even want to think of. I recall, I think it was about 6 years ago now, when I shared a video that I had an issue with. I had a depression issue. And when one of the things that I asked in the video, I asked people who saw me, who interacted with me in the time since it started, because it was medication related. So I knew exactly when it started. And I asked people, I'm like, okay, did you know? When I did speak with people, they were all able to say, no, I couldn't tell because, I was handling business. I was struggling. It was hard. My whole body was falling apart at that time. So yeah, I was going through a lot, but nobody really knew. So but I was able to, hey, have my regular life doing everything. And yes, of course, that was a short-term thing, but a lot of people have a long-term mental illness that they're going through, that they're taking medications for, that they're going to therapy for. And you don't see it. You don't know it. You don't notice it because they are managing their mental health. When one of the reasons that sometimes people have this idea that you can tell or that mental illness gets in the way of life is that we often see the people who have unmanaged mental illnesses. So if someone is going through is living with bipolar disorder that is not properly managed, then yes, you're more likely to see the illness acting with the symptoms of the illness. But when the illness is managed, when the person is doing their treatments and following through with their treatments, a lot of times you have no idea that anything is going on. So having a full life, absolutely possible. Some of the most successful people that we know are living with various levels of mental illness, whether it's a serious major depression to bipolar disorder and some even schizophrenia and other stuff that we don't know about because they are managing it. So with a mental illness that is well managed, you can have the life that you desire or the life you've always had. 4. Mental illness is not specific to any particular group. It doesn't matter, man or woman, rich, poor, whatever your racial, ethnic background or religious or whatever. Because sometimes people have this idea that, yeah, it's those people. No, it's not those people. It's not specific to any group. Any of us at any given moment can be impacted by a mental illness. If you're not impacted at the moment, just be grateful that at the moment you are in a place where this is not one of the things that you have to manage in your life. But know that it does not say anything about a particular group. It does not say anything about a specific person. It is, it's equal opportunity. Hey, it's your turn kind of type of illness, I guess. So it's not specific to any group. So don't think that just because you are, if you start experiencing a mental health issue that the people would think that you're XYZ because it's only those people. No, it's not those people. It's everybody. Finally, mental illness, no matter how much the media may excuse or use mental illness to excuse certain behaviors, mental illness does not lead to drugs, crimes, or suicide. One thing, but before, as I say that, I will say many people who do suffer from mental illness will self-medicate because a lot of times the medication that are prescribed, especially if they don't have the right medication with the right dosage, and sometimes it's not doing what it's supposed to do, or sometimes they have not been diagnosed and they don't have the medication that they need. So sometimes people will self-medicate in order to deal with the symptoms but that's usually because their illness is not being properly managed. But mental illness does not mean that you're going to suddenly become a drug addict. No. If you have a mental illness and you're following through with your treatment, you will be just fine. It also is not a gateway to crime. People with mental illnesses don't just go around shooting people or doing all sorts of whatever things that you see in the news. They are saying, yeah, it's because of this person's mental illness. No, that's not what it is. It's just sometimes that's what is used to excuse certain behaviors, but it's not. And even suicide. A lot of time, yes, it does happen that sometimes a person with mental illnesses can die by suicide. But that's usually not, it's not because, hey, the mental illness caused suicide. It's because the person wasn't, again, able to get the right treatment. Their illness was not properly managed. And they got to that point where they felt that, hey, this was my only way out. But it's not necessarily that the mental illness is what caused the suicidal behavior. And so just because someone does have a mental illness does not mean that they're suddenly going to become suicidal or that they're suddenly going to start engaging in suicidal behaviors, because that's not how it works. Yes, sometimes there are medications that they have the warning that, hey, may cause suicidal ideation, but that's not necessarily mental health related medication. That's medication in general, because a lot of stuff have that as a side effect. So, all right, so let's do a quick recap. 1, mental illness is definitely not a punishment from God. It's not a punishment any more than anything else could be a punishment from God. It's just another illness that some people get, just like some people get it and some other people don't. 2, mental illness is not a sign of weakness. It's not one of those things where because you couldn't handle it and that you couldn't handle a certain situation, that's why you have a mental health related issue. No, that's not how it works. People have mental illnesses because they have mental illnesses just like people have cancer and diabetes. And 3, mental illness does not prevent you from having a full life. People who have a mental illness with the right with the right services in place will have as full a life that anyone without a mental health issue can have. It's just that sometimes it takes time for people to first identify what's going on and then get the right treatment for what they're experiencing. Mental illness is absolutely not specific to any particular group, regardless of how you try to segment the world, whether gender, racial, ethnic, social, economic status. Anyone and everyone can at any given moment be impacted by a mental illness. And finally, mental illness does not lead to drugs, crimes, or suicide. It's just that sometimes it does happen that people will self-medicate because they don't have the right treatment for their illness. Or sometimes the media does try to excuse every major crime that they don't want to admit happened by a mental health related issue, but that's not always true. And the other thing is, just having a mental health issue does not necessarily mean that a person is going to be suicidal or engage in suicidal behaviors. But yes, it does happen sometimes that when a person's illness is not being properly managed, they can get to the point where it feels like this was their only solution. But that's really not a thing that just because you experience a mental health condition that you're suddenly going to end up suicidal or end up having, any of these things happening. Yeah, that's about it. So as always, if you or someone you know happens to be going through something that's more than you can handle, please remember that there are professionals like myself who are available, able, and willing to help, and are even providing remote services who can assist with whatever you may have going on. So please figure out who those people are in your community so that if you need them, you can reach out and get the help that you need. And that is all we have for today. Good morning, world. Have an awesome day.